Will Hunting is an orphan that works as a janitor at a university which he does not attend. Though he can't afford to and is simply uninterested in going to school, he is indeed an autodidactic genius. Everything he knows is self-taught. He spends all his time reading, and as a result, he's able to defend himself in court without an attorney because remember, he's broke, and gets all his multiple assault and grand larceny charges consecutively overturned simply because he knows the constitution better than most lawyers. He is so smart in fact that he's able to solve combinatorial mathematics equations that have been troubling Ivy League level professors at the university he works at as a janitor. Evidently, his genius intellect doesn't go unnoticed and he ends up working with the smartest mathematics professor at the university. But because he recently assaulted a police officer while resisting arrest for assaulting some guy that used to bully him in kindergarten and was unable to sweet talk his way out of those combined charges, the judge makes him see a therapist once a week or else he'll have to save time. And that's where the fun of the movie really begins. At least from a psychological point of view. You see, Will has been in and out of foster homes for most of his life, so from a very young age, he had to realize that he can't really rely on anybody for shit. He was forced to grow up faster than the other kids, figure out life for himself, struggle for his next meal, make sure he doesn't get pushed around, hence, all those assault and grand theft auto charges. So all this combined with lack of a strong family support system, seeing as how his original parents fucking died, and his numerous foster parents at best neglected him and at worst abused him, led him to erect emotional firewalls around his psyche as a way to protect himself from and prove to the world that it can't hurt him. So he ends up scaring away every therapist that Professor Gerard assigns to him with a series of psychological tricks and mind games ranging from subversively questioning their sexuality to straight up just pissing them off until they leave. Eventually, Gerard enlists the help of his former college roommate Sean, who ends up being a psychological match for Will, averts his attempts to fuck with his mind, helps him open up about his trauma, and even becomes his very good friend. But the road to that happy ending was anything but smooth and easy. During their first session, Sean starts off with some basic questions in an attempt to get to know Will, but he just ignores them and diverts the conversation to wherever he pleases. A real assertive power move on some big dick energy type shit. Will thinks this makes him look cool, but in actuality, all he does is reveal his innate fear of vulnerability. Sean follows along and plays a little game while actively taking advantage of any opportunity to squeeze any sort of personal information out of Will, all of which he immediately deflects while subtly making fun of Sean and his life choices. Again, trying to assert his dominance. But Sean, being a licensed clinical psychologist and certified old man, knows very well that he can't give any sort of reaction to the things Will says about him because whoever reacts first is the person that cares the most, and whoever cares the most always loses. This is a psychological principle that can be seen in many aspects of life. For example, in sales or any sort of corporate business dealing, when an offer has been made, whoever speaks first loses because you reveal your hand and give your opponent more material to work with while also letting them know that you are more invested and interested in the deal going successfully, so you have something to lose. Sean knows this all too well, so he plays along while using deflection tactics such as agree and amplify to show that he has a good sense of humor, so he'd be fun to talk to, and he doesn't have any buttons that can be pushed, so he's not so easily manipulated. But Will keeps pushing, and at a certain point he insults a painting that Sean made and manages to interpret it as him being unsatisfied with his life. Again, Sean plays along, so Will presents the hypothesis that his dissatisfaction with his life came as a result of him marrying the wrong wife, at which point Sean breaks character and tells him to watch his mouth, which was mostly a good move because when dealing with psychologically manipulative individuals, while it is a strategically sound approach to present yourself as nonchalant for most of the interaction, at a certain point you have to put your foot down and be firm so they know that while you can't be manipulated, they also can't disrespect you or push you around as they please. This also functions similarly to the first two principles of game theory: be cooperative but don't be a pushover. Now, I said it was mostly but not entirely a good move because in addition to positioning yourself as a force to be reckoned with, it also reveals your weakness, and if your opponent is perceptive enough, he will spot it and easily use it against you. Where you choose to put your foot down in the conversation immediately reveals to your opponent the one thing you care about, which, as we all know, is very deleterious to your position in a game of psychological manipulation because whoever cares the most loses, and that's exactly what happens. Sean puts his foot down immediately. Will mentions his wife. Will spots the weak spot, drives a knife into it.
Maybe you married the wrong woman.
Maybe you should watch your mouth.
What happened? Well, that's it, isn't it? You married the wrong woman. Why'd she leave you? Was she, banging some other guy?
Then Sean gives an emotional reaction, thereby losing the battle on both the psychological plane and in the court of public opinion, because no amount of explaining will be able to justify you violently attacking a person that's half your age on the basis that he said some mean things about your wife. The following week, during their next session, Sean employs the aid of another manipulation technique, this time one of biblical origins, which says, disarm your enemy with kindness. Now, for the sake of brevity and clarity, I'm going to explain this tactic with an example. So, imagine you have a disagreement with your friend that escalates into an argument, and in the heat of the moment, your friend takes a personal story you told them in your time of need and uses it against you. Up until this point, the situation was relatively neutral with no singular party standing out as the antagonist. Then your friend definitively makes themselves the bad guy by using your vulnerability as ammunition. The reactionary thing to do would be to do the same thing in return, taking something personal they told you and using it against them. Effectively repaying evil with evil, therefore making you equally as bad as them, even though they cross the line first. Where the disarm your enemy with kindness philosophy comes into play is, right after your friend crosses the line, you immediately take a step back, look them in the eyes and tell them how fucked up it is that they would weaponize your friendship like that. Then just watch them get consumed by shame and guilt while you walk away as the victor. This is essentially what Sean did in response to Will slandering his wife. He sits him down and subtly communicates to him that his wife died from cancer and that he's just a kid, so he has no idea what real life is like, and all the answers can be found within a book.
I ask you about love, probably quote me a sonnet. You've never looked at a woman and been totally vulnerable. I ask you about war, you probably throw Shakespeare at me, right? Once more into the breach, dear friends, but you've never been near one. If I ask you about women, you probably give me a syllabus of your personal favorites. You may have even been laid a few times, but you can't tell me what it feels like to wake up next to a woman and feel truly happy.
So, he can't possibly hope to know all the things he has been through after simply analyzing an old painting of his for 5 seconds. The same way he can't know the all-encompassing experience of the orphan that is Will hunting simply because he read Oliver Twist. He then concludes by saying that even though he doesn't want to open up to anyone, whenever he's ready to talk, he'll be here. Then he walks away, having neutralized his evil deed of slandering his dead wife, not by slandering his dead parents, but by offering to be his friend, therefore disarming him with kindness. During their next few sessions, we go back to our psychological sales principle of whoever talks first loses, as Will consecutively spends each of their 1-hour weekly sessions in silence, refusing to talk in order to prove that he doesn't have to talk to him if he doesn't want to. Which is just Will trying to reclaim some of the power he lost the last time they spoke when Sean put him in his place and disarmed him with kindness. So Sean plays along yet again.
Is this some kind of staring contest between two kids from the old neighborhood?
Yeah, it is. And I can't talk first.
Knowing fully well that he can't afford to lose, not because of his ego, but because he knows that it's the only way to get through to Will and try to start doing his job of helping him heal. Then, in a shocking turn of events, Will actually breaks the silence, essentially losing this psychological round, but he does it in a way where he still somehow ends up on top for some fucking reason. You see, Will has this girl he likes, but he's not talking to her or calling her because, again, he's afraid of intimacy and vulnerability. So he finally breaks the silence so he can talk about her, but he doesn't want to outrightly lose the battle by being the first to talk and also immediately being vulnerable. So he tells a joke, Sean laughs, then he brings up the fact that he does indeed get laid, referencing their previous conversation. Then he starts telling Sean about the girl he went on a date with, the thing he actually wanted to talk about. You see, he had to go through the process of telling a joke first, then referencing their earlier conversation before he got to the girl he wanted to talk about, because the joke helped him feel like he was still in control of the room even though he broke the silence first and lost the battle, and he had to make the conversation about the girl seem more organic than it was, and seemingly as a result of Sean's old comments, because he doesn't want to appear as if he needs to talk to Sean about this particular thing lest he risks revealing something he actually cares about. His excuse for not talking to the girl he likes is that right now she's perfect and he doesn't want to ruin that by talking to her even though he really likes her. Yeah, I'm sure I lost at least 4 brain cells while I was writing that statement. Sean then tells him how his wife used to fart so loud in her sleep she'd wake herself up. They both laughed, and you'd think that this was just Sean trying to get closer to Will, or maybe just even taking advantage of the opportunity to talk to somebody about his dead wife, because a therapist doesn't usually do this much talking, let alone sharing of intimate details about their interpersonal lives. But then he brings it back around and tells Will that those little imperfections are the best part of a relationship, and that the girl he likes isn't perfect and neither is he. It's really all about finding out if you guys are perfect for each other. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I just got back my 4 brain cells. As usual, Will makes fun of him for talking a lot and revealing so much about himself. So like before, Sean agrees and amplifies his jokes in response, but this time, not because he's trying to psychologically defend himself from or outmatch an intellectually versatile opponent. Nah, he does it because making fun of each other is simply what friends do. They share another laugh and Will goes to go see about a girl. Anyway, subscribe to my Patreon for Weko's Echo. That's my Patreon exclusive weekly podcast where I review movies, answer your questions, and react to Reddit stories. Whew! Well, this was fun. Subscribe to the Patreon, link in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next analysis.
Jesus Christ. If I can talk more than any shrink I ever seen in my life.
I teach this shit. I didn't say I know how to do it.